warmest of greetings to you, and possibly also the wettest of greetings to you, given the story we've got this week. And welcome back to Happily Ever Teaching, where we help you enthrall your learners in every subject under the sun using the best teaching method known to science, storytelling. To do this, we feature special guest educators who are passionately keen for your children to become amazing and successful human beings. I am storyteller Chip Cahoon, and with me this week is...
Hi, I'm Bex, and I'm a primary school teacher from Cambridgeshire. I've experienced teaching across the age range, being a deputy head, and I'm also the curriculum and teaching and learning lead, and I have the privilege of training and releasing the next generation of teachers as well.
And today we are exploring learning outcomes in history and geography with this week's folktale from Japan. You can listen to the story by downloading our sister podcast, Fables and Fairy Tales, or search our website, epictales.co.uk, for The Underwater Kingdom. There you'll find a video of me telling the story that you can share with your children. And if you sign up as an Epic Educator, you'll also get a copy as an ebook or paperback illustrated by Winnie the Witch's very own Korky Paul, as well as the full audiobook for you to download at any time, and even some tips for telling the story yourself. Right now, though, let's continue our discussion with Bex here by exploring the geography of, well, I guess the geography of the underwater world and Japan. Is there one of those that you're going to be exploring more with this story?
Probably a mixture of both.
Okay.
So I was thinking that obviously the children in our early part of the school, so our early years children to our year 2 children, they need to have a real understanding of the 7 continents of the world and the seas that surround it. So that would be a great starting place to explore the location of this story. The setting is Japan, so really knowing where Japan is, which continent it's on, which seas surround it, the capital city, and some of, in year 2, you'd need to be looking at some of the human and physical features of Japan. So obviously we have got Japan now, and we've got Japan 700 years ago to be contending with as well, because the story's set 700 years apart with the when Hiroshima goes missing in the storm as to when he arrives out of the ocean. The 700 years have passed, so we would also need to be thinking about Japan now and Japan in the past, in order to help younger children particularly understand that concept. I'd start off by looking at our locality. So for me, it would be Cambridgeshire now and Cambridgeshire 700 years ago. What's changed? What's the same? And what's different? Because I think when Hiroshima comes out of the water, there's going to be a lot of things that he doesn't understand, because obviously our technology and our landscape changes quite significantly in short periods of time, let alone hundreds of years. Well, 700 in this fact.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think we definitely want to do some looking at the history as well as the geography. You can't look at one without the other, actually, I've realised.
Not with this story.
Not with this story.
No. I love the idea, though, of doing this in different locations as well, because thinking of it, actually, as you were saying that, maybe that's one of the reasons why the time seems to go so slowly in the underwater world, because it just doesn't change as much as life has on land. You know, I'm sure 700 years ago, the sea, obviously there would be less plastic floating around, but they would be more or less the same types of creatures. Sharks are supposedly prehistoric, aren't they? So, yeah, you can maybe even look at a comparison there and how different the oceans have become in 700 years and how different the different countries have become in 700 years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Hiroshima, looking at the point of where he arrives back, and maybe linking that to what we were talking about last week in the English about the newspaper article. Obviously, there'll be lots of things that Hiroshima sees that he won't know what they are. So like planes and cars and like skyscrapers. There'll be lots of things that he will not have seen before that we'll need to explain to him in terms that he can understand. So this is what you used to use to pull your... a car is just like a motorised vehicle that does what your horse used to do in helping you to... Of course,
then you'll have to explain what motorised means.
So lots and lots of difficult things for Hiroshima to understand. But really for our younger children, they need to understand the location of Japan, the continent that it's on, look at some of the human and physical features, and be able to, and I would then look at Japan now and Japan in the past. I'd also, this is again a topic that I think you could, or an idea that you could transport into the upper school, so into for our years 3 to 6, or 8 to 11-year-olds. And I think that I would want them to also explore Japan now, Japan 700 years ago, go back and pull on that prior knowledge that they should have already got from their time in Key Stage 1, and also then look at things like the climate of Japan and the like tallest mountains, looking at like more in detail the maps, so the biggest cities, the coast, and then getting them to again compare Japan now and Japan 700 years ago, and do the same with our local area, but look at a bit more detail about the particularly about the climate and the human and physical features of Japan. And then what I would really challenge the children to do is take the story and put it on a different continent. So what would be seen, what creatures would be living under the sea, what changes would have happened in that 700-year period if the story was set. For example, the easiest one that I can think of now is Antarctica, because a lot will have changed, because obviously the ice will have shrunk. We've had global warming. We've had there'll be lots of change. What animals would he come into contact with? What would he have rode onto the Dragon Palace? What would the Dragon Palace have been made out of? There's loads of different things, because then it really shows the children's understanding of different continents and different countries, and what's the same and what would be different in the story. What would we have to change, and what would be the same if we were to write it happening somewhere else.
It's also a really fantastic exercise in descriptive language or metaphorical language, trying to that idea that you said earlier, trying to describe what you are experiencing using the language of what you know. So yes, I actually do that a lot when I'm telling this story. When Urashima comes out from the water, rather than saying he looked up and he saw a plane, I say something like he looked up and he saw a great huge metallic bird, but it seemed to have windows in the side, and it had wings that weren't moving, and it was making an enormous noise. What do you think it could be? And of course the children are going to know, but it's starting to help them realize that you sometimes need to describe things in a way that your listener and your audience understands. So being able to describe what Japan looks like using the language of the West, but also flipping that on its head and describing what your own hometown might look like in language and symbols that the Japanese might recognize. And some describing the past in language that we would know today, but doing that the other way around as well, describing today in language they'd know from the past.
And I guess you've got a great opportunity again to immerse the children in the Japanese culture, again in whichever year group in the school. If you've got families in your community that are Japanese or have Japanese heritage, like Japanese shop or anything that you can think of in your local community where you can get hold of some artifacts or get hold of some things that are important to the Japanese culture, just to help them to really understand where the story is being set. I think that just is so important to understand how different countries are the same and different to how we live in our country. So I think it's just a great opportunity to immerse them in culture as well.
Fabulous. That's all we have time for today, folks. If you try out any of these ideas, or if you'd like us to help you teach a topic you are soon to cover with your young learners, please let us know on social media using @TeachHappily, or leave us a review using your favourite podcast app. Please also share this podcast with your colleagues and help us start a story-led revolution in classrooms around the world, so children everywhere can learn in a way that's effective, memorable and enjoyable all at the same time. Tomorrow, Urashima will help us create some art. But right now, it only remains for us to say cheerio, and we hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio! And we hope to hear your story soon.